Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another well-curated edition of the Digital Dialogues brought to you by the Broadband India Forum in association with our events partner, Bharat Exhibitions. Today, we will be releasing a white paper on Satcom and 5G, the final frontier. This important paper is the outcome of a session on the topic held back in November 2020 and has been commissioned by the Satcom committee. We are very privileged indeed to have with us the chair and co-chairs of this committee, in addition to many other dignitaries, while this paper is being released. But before we proceed to the formal events, let me also announce that in our drive to promote accessibility in the digital communications world, we at Broadband India Forum had initially made our website completely accessible, benefiting people with disabilities. We then introduced the next step forward with sign language interpreters for all webinars and events. And I suspect we are among the very few around the globe that provide this facility. It therefore gives me great pleasure to welcome today Dr. Renuka Rameshan, the president of the Association of Sign Language Interpreters India, and her colleague, Mr. Saurabh Roy Chowdhury, to do the sign language interpretation for this very important event. Dr. Renuka Rameshan holds a PhD in social work and is a senior sign language interpreter and trainer with an experience of over 20 years in the field. Currently, she is also an executive member of the Indian Sign Language Research and Training Center, the ISLRTC, and accompanying her is Mr. Saurabh Roy Chowdhury, who is a member of the Association of Sign Language Interpreters, India, and a freelance sign language interpreter in his own right. He has done his master's in Extension and Development Studies and is proficient in English, Hindi, Bangla, Indian Sign Language, and the American Sign Language. And now to a few housekeeping announcements. There is a chat box and a Q&A box on the bottom of the screen, in case any questions need answers. And a raise your hand button right next to it to indicate that you wish to have the floor. The moderator will then determine the opportunity to invite you to speak. Keeping your camera on is a matter of personal choice and convenience, except when speaking. However, in the event of a loss of bandwidth, my experience has been that switching off the camera often helps. The event is being recorded, and a link will be shared with all participants to revisit and share should you wish to. With these few announcements out of the way, it is my pleasure to hand over to our president of the Broadband India Forum, Mr. T.V. Ramachandran, who really needs no introduction. An esteemed industry veteran, TVR has been part of the mobile telephony sector in India since its very inception. As the first CEO of Sterling Cellular in Delhi, and having established and led the COAI for 12 years. He's a recipient of the Voice and Data Lifetime Contribution Award for his mobile telephony contribution in India. He's also an honorary fellow of IET London, UK, and the IETE India. TV, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rajat, for the kind introduction. Chief guest, Shri A.K. Tiwari, Member T of the Department of Telecommunications, Ministry of Communications. I must say here that this is probably his first public appearance after taking over as Member T. And we are indeed most grateful to him for this kind gesture to us. Special guest of honor, Mr. Chaubert, who has taken the trouble to join us from Europe, despite a time difference. Is a distinguished rapporteur of the Satcom work item in 3GPP standards body, and we are great pleasure in having him here with us today. DDG Shri Kishore Babu, DDG Satellite, Shri Shakya, our Satcom Chairman, Shri P.J. Nath, Satcom Co-Chairman, Shri K. Krishna and Shri Rahul Watts, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. The importance of digital communication through satellites cannot be overstated at all for a large subcontinent like India. India is not a country, it's a large subcontinent. Having such diverse terrain and so many remote and difficult to access locations. So the importance of satellites in providing connectivity in such a country is indeed huge. Concurrently, we must also realize and appreciate that citizens living in such rural and remote locations have probably a greater need for broadband to improve their day-to-day living, quality of living, and productivity, as even compared to us who are more fortunate to be in the urban environments. Thirdly, applications based on 5G are the talk of the day. They are going to be extremely important for delivering advanced wireless services, for appropriate healthcare, for manufacturing. So many applications are there, verticals. It's the first vertical going out of telecom. And these are all the more important in rural and remote areas for the livelihood and for bridging the digital divide. However, as experts would explain and clarify, it is very difficult as well as expensive to reach terrestrial networks to these locations. The further you go from an urban environment, the costlier the rollout becomes, more difficult. It's not just the money, the onerous clearances, the physical effort, it becomes a very big challenge. And the cost relationship between terrestrial and satellite has also changed remarkably over the years due to the advent of various modern technologies that have come into play in satellite communication. When moving from urban to rural or remote, there is actually now a total reversal of relationship between terrestrial and satellite, to the extent that the satellite method becomes significantly cheaper. We all tend to think satellite is expensive because we are from the urban environment and not really abreast of all the modern technologies and improvements in Satcom. But you bring all those together, satellite becomes actually cheaper in such remote and rural areas. In fact, I would like to highlight here that the ITU, International Telecommunications Union of Geneva, which is the world's highest body for telecommunications, had rightly pointed out in their excellent report on 5G in 2019 that when 5G is introduced, there is bound to be an increase in digital divide in the initial years due to the expensive new technology being rolled out initially to the creamy layer of population in the urban areas. That is bound to happen. In a business, you can't help it. Otherwise, how do you justify the expenditure in the new technology? And this sort of digital divide enhancement is something we cannot afford in India. We already have a major digital divide. We have major digital divide if you look at it from the point of view of broadband, because today voice connectivity is passive. That is taken for granted. We need digital communications of an advanced order through broadband. And that we have to extend to our rural brethren urgently to provide them all the advanced digital services. Hence, the role of satellites, if we put all these together, it becomes obvious. The role of satellites for 5G becomes all the more important for India as compared to most other nations that I know of that are of similar size, importance, and advancement, and who are entering 5G era. We are also knocking on the doors of 5G. And we need to bear this in mind that satellites will have a great role to play for us in India. And in this context, I must also laud very warmly the actions of the Department of the Department of Telecommunications. 2-3 actions they have done recently, which is fantastic. One, they modernized even the very specifications for satellite Satcom communications to bring it up to date with the latest developments. And number two, they have the digital communications has sanctioned the use of satellite for cellular backhaul. I told you it is very difficult to roll out, it's very expensive. So the backhaul through satellite becomes now a reality as allowed by the policy rules. With these words, I will not take up more time, ladies and gentlemen. Mine is not supposed to be a substantive talk. All the great experts are here. And I wish you all a very interesting, very useful session with a galaxy of experts we are fortunate to have with us. Thank you for a patient hearing. And I wish you all the best in the time ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, TV, for setting the tone. And now for the panel discussion. I would like to invite the chair of the Satcom Committee of the Broadband India Forum, Mr. Pradeep Nath, MD and CEO of Tata Nelco. He is a graduate and Master of Management Studies from BITS Pilani. He joined Nelco as the CEO in 2011 and has rich experience of over 25 years in the enterprise market in reputed IT, services integration, and telecom service companies, including ICIM, Wipro, Tata Communications, and prominently in SIFI as Executive President for the Enterprise Businesses section. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Rajat. Good afternoon, Mr. Ramchandran. Good afternoon to my fellow panelists, Mr. Sakya, Krishna, Rahul, Gautam. I think we are still awaiting one more panelist to join. So we will speak to him when he comes in. Before I give a few minutes or few sentences of what I think of this event and these two technologies, let me first introduce the panelist here, who is present here. Mr. Sri R. Sakya. He is the DDG satellite in Department of Telecom. He is an ITS officer of 1988 batch. He has over 30 years of experience in handling various facets of telecom. He has earlier served as senior advisor to the ICT Authority, Government of Mauritius, and as director in various functions within DOT, such as Internet Monitoring System, Security, Vigilance and Telecom Monitoring, Quality Assurance, and Term. Mr. Kishore Babu has not yet joined, so maybe I will introduce him once he comes in. Let me now introduce the next panelist, which is Mr. K. Krishna, a very well-known personality in the VSAT industry. He is a Vice President and CTO of Hughes Communication India, one of the founding members of the India operations of Hughes. He has more than 25 years of experience in the satellite industry, responsible for the technology roadmap and various strategic initiatives of the company. He also played an active role in formulation of the in-flight and maritime communication connectivity rules for the country. The next, I would like to introduce Mr. Rahul Watts. Is a Chief Regulatory Officer, Bharti Airtel, and Director, OneWeb India. We all have been hearing about OneWeb, and Rahul has been playing a very important role in giving shape to the OneWeb's game plan in the country. He has, with more than 25 years of experience in the telecom and digital regulations domain. He is an expert on telecom licensing, economic regulations, spectrum management, new technologies like M2M and IoT, and regulatory litigations. He has been an active part of various industry and regulatory initiatives in India's telecom and digital journey. Now I'd like to introduce Mr. Gautam Sharma. Again, a very well-known person in the satellite communication industry in the country. He's a managing director in Inmarsat India, focused on the introduction of Inmarsat voice and broadband data communication services across India, powered by the company's 4th generation I4 of mobile satellites. Prior to joining Inmarsat, he held a range of senior international positions with Huawei, Erasur International Holding, Pacific, Bangladesh Telecom, and Hexacom India Limited, now Airtel. Now, the way we will run this, the panel discussion today would be to ask specific questions to the panelists and get their views. And through that, we will get a fairly good idea of what's happening in the two technologies we've been talking about, satellite and 5G, and together what happens when we look at satellite and 5G as a whole, and also giving a flavor to what is happening in the country. Yeah. Now, before I ask the first question, just a few sentences from my perspective in terms of what do we think of these two technologies coming together. As far as the satellite industry is concerned, I think we are quite well aware of what's happened. The geo satellites have evolved from the wide beams to high throughput and very high throughput spot beam technology. The payloads have become digital, now becoming software-defined payloads, which can customize power, capacity, and size of beams as per ground segments. There's a significant development that is happening globally around this. We all have been hearing a lot about the LEO constellations in the recent past. A lot of developments have happened around that. And I'm sure quite a bit will be talked during the discussion today. And this, apart from these advancements on the geo satellite as well as the non-geo space, there are also a lot of developments happening in the ground segment, both in terms of the electronics as well as the antenna systems, which are also making the satellite communication to be significantly evolved as compared to what it was in the past. And overall, when you look at all these developments with geostationary satellites, wherever it has come, and still the developments happening, the LEO satellites, in terms of the developments and the different launches which have happened, in terms of the different technologies which have evolved, together when you look at it, that the overall capability of satellite communication has significantly improved to serve the mobile industry as well as the other industry segments. 5G is an entirely new networking tech architecture, a network of networks with multiple access technologies like Wi-Fi, small cells, terrestrial mobile network, as well as satellite. The 3GPP, the standard body under Release 17, has agreed to define satellite integration specifications. And this is a significant milestone for both the cellular and the satellite industries. Currently, the satellite has been restricted to, in India, has been restricted to providing only as a cellular backhaul. But with the new developments that is happening around satellite technology, with this 3GPP specifications coming in, satellite could be playing a significantly larger role in the 5G deployment and coexist with 5G and make a much better use cases than what it has been possible so far. While a lot has been happening globally, India has not been behind. A lot of work has been done by the industry and by the government to make this thing work out in the country. And in the next next half an hour to 40 minutes, we will speak to the eminent panelists to understand as to what is happening in the country, what do they think of the development, what do they think of the new use cases, and many other and some other topics around this. With this, let me start my first question to Mr. Sakia.
Please.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Mr. Sakia.
Good afternoon.
Amongst the new satellite technologies, LEOs and MEOs are getting extremely popular these days. I think we have been all hearing about it all over. However, India still does not use any of the technologies as yet, though there are a lot of discussion, a lot of talks happening around that. How and what should be done to usher in these new technologies into the mainstream? And I'm sure in your capacity, you'll be able to throw a light around this. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Na. And let me extend my gratitude to the Broadband India Forum for having me invited and giving this opportunity to speak to all of you and put the perspective which could be of use for the entire industry and all the relevant stakeholders. It's a fact that so far low Earth orbit satellites are not being utilized in the communication sector within the country. But we are not supposed to be nervous with this aspect, because there are few very good things to share that will give the joy and hope for all the stakeholders. And from the government step side, let me share first fact which you all may be aware of. In the Spacecom policy itself, there is a separate chapter how the non-GSO satellites are going to be used and in what manner the respective regulations are likely to come. So that is the enablement from the government side. Government is already sees that the MU and the LEO kind of satellite constellations are going to play very significant role. So we have to provide the enabling policy framework that is already there in the consultation stage. That is also over. Probably anytime it may get notified, because all the activities requisited for this policy has been completed by the Department of Space. It is being administered and pioneered by them. And it is just administrative approval which would be required. That information will be known to all of us. On the industry side also, as some of you may be aware, that our friend is also there from OneWeb, representing by Mr. Rahul Watts. So let me share his part, that he has applied for the license on GMPCS services as well as the NLD services using the low Earth orbit satellite constellations. Both the applications are being handled by the DOT at the respective levels. I believe the LOI for the NLD license has already been issued to them. GMPCS, since require little larger participation and the discussion, and the decision-making entity is an interministerial group under the Apex Committee. Those cases are under consideration, and I'm sure in due course the decision on that will also be known. So there's nothing to worry that we are not going to have it soon. We will have the services rolled out under the LEO scheme. Further, to enable that, we are in process of discussion with the TRAI, and probably a reference may go to the TRAI how best we can regulate the current licensing framework, providing enabling environment to the all forthcoming technologies, especially in the satellite sector, serving to the rural side, serving to the non-accessible places, serving to those places with the very specific application basis, where the population target may not be very high, the geographical requirement to serve those specific application may not be the entire country, but it may be, say, a part of the some taluka, maybe few specified places, maybe some specific reason. And for that, an intended party may not be interested to have the license taken for the entire country. So we are looking for a licensing framework which could be geographic, specific, application based. I'm sure the TRAI will initiate the process after the formal information or the reference reaches to them from the DOT. And we will have a very considered, well-conceived, looking into all aspects of licensing from the user perspective, from the service provider perspectives, and having very special attention paid to the fact that the infrastructure required in case of satellite is very different from the mobile technologies. So we need to take care in respect of sharing of gateways, setting up of point of interfaces, so the interconnect provided by them is proper. Infrastructure is not required to be replicated by the multiple service providers. I hope with that kind of the enabling environment, by the next year end, we will have very proliferating scope and the services rolled out within the country. I hope that will make sense to reply to you. Back to Napis.
Thank you, Mr. Sakya. Thank you very much. I think it's been very enlightening to understand, to know what the government is doing. And I'll come back to you again with some more questions later on. But let me ask the next question since you talk a lot about OneWeb, let me talk to Rahul. The next question. Rahul, the first question that I have for you is what are likely to be the future use cases that are going to be popular using Satcom? What do you think your views are around that?
Yeah, thank you, PJ, for that question. Let me first, start by thanking Broadband India Forum, TV, and Rajat for this invite. I appreciate the BIF support on highlighting critical issues relating to the growth of satellite broadband. On the specific query which PJ you have asked, I think let me start by giving some numbers. The total data traffic over last 5 years, and I'm talking primarily mobility, if you can see it that way. Last 5 years, around 60 times growth, and average subscriber usage is around 13 GB. 90% of this is currently coming from category A, category B circles. And 4G penetration is around 77%. 5 hours of daily smartphone usage is the time. It is also predicted that around 2.1 billion network devices will be there, going ahead. So basically, it is evident now that the data and the traffic on networks is exploding, and we are on the cusp of next stage of growth with machines and humans all connected alike. So what are the applications for this? Basically means that we have to explore all possible technological avenues to serve the customer, especially when pace of fiberization in this country remains quite low due to a variety of reasons. Hence the role of satellite systems in the growth of broadband, and that is very, very critical now. From a user perspective, I think the satellite systems such as LEO, which OneWeb is there, we are trying to address, if I have to break it up, 3 main stakeholders. One, of course, will be the telcos themselves, because we can provide the satellite connectivity for cellular backhaul to supplement broadband rollout in tough geographies, or economics of fiber rollout are just not making sense. To businesses, I think we can expand and serve the need of enterprises through dedicated bandwidth capacities. We can also be direct suppliers of digital service aimed at institutions, need to embed connectivity, for example, vehicles, equipment, etc. IoT applications, requiring low cost, low powered, and low maintenance solutions is another area where we can support the businesses. I think primarily we are also, most happy to work with the government, particularly, in transport infrastructure, things like smart motorways, future driverless vehicles. A lot of usages in agriculture, fishing, innovations in education, connecting universities at some places. We can also look at providing PNT solutions for the country to supplement the existing NAVIC system, right? And also, of course, the usage in disaster is what is known to everybody. So I think there are also, we are in discussion with a lot of departments in the government, also on the security aspects, and wherever we can actually assist the government on security related issues. So I think the scope is quite wide in terms of usage. And I am thankful to Mr. Sakya, who mentioned that we are now progressing at a good pace. And we hope to be able to serve the customers more and more in coming days. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rahul. Thanks so much for sharing the broad plan. We'll come back to you again later. My next question is to Krishna. Krishna, what are the challenges faced by the satellite players in popularizing the use of Satcom, and what are the areas where you require government support?
Thanks, PJ, and sincerely thank the Broadband India Forum for giving this opportunity. I think I would like to list the top two things, that's always on my mind, and these are the hurdles that we face. But prior to that, I would like to say that I think a lot has been done. I think we all need to acknowledge that in the recent cellular backhaul thing, which was approved by the DCC, the TEC specifications that have been amended. So I think a number of steps are being taken, and Mr. Shakya also talked about some of them. I think in a lighter note, I've always told him this, that he's been the lucky charm for us, that as soon as he took office, a lot of the changes started happening. Thank you so much, sir, for that. We are all, I think out of the two things that I mentioned, first thing definitely is the Satcom policy. Again, we heard from him that it's coming soon. I think to be able to, I've always said this, that the supply should outperform the demand, and that can happen only in a free market. It can't happen in a restricted market. In a restricted market, always the demand will be more than the supply. So that has to change, and hopefully with the Satcom policy, new Satcom policy or Spacecom policy, whatever it's called, that will change. The second aspect is, from the ease of doing business, we all know, I think, again, I'm not going into who is at fault, or, I'm not trying to pinpoint anybody, or, I think we all have to put our collective heads and resolve this. We'll have to come up with a different thinking. Today, for us to operationalize a network or even give additional capacity, additional bandwidth to a customer is a big pain area. It takes months and months and sometimes years. I think that's something fundamentally wrong with the process, and we all need to put our heads, both as associations, as companies, and the government. We all, I think, need to collectively find out and figure out how can we adopt some of the international best practices, or even if it's not possible to adopt some of these practices. Most often businesses go through this what's called as business process re-engineering, which kind of looks at existing processes and tries to bring in efficiency, effectiveness, etc. I think we need to do that in the regulatory sphere as well. So I think these two things, if they are addressed, I think we are, as an industry, we are going to be unstoppable. I think we'll achieve greater heights as a country in the space and Satcom arena for sure. I think from my side, I think these are the 2 points that I would like to put at the top of the list. That would be my answer.
Thank you, Krishna. Thank you. My next question is to Gautam. Gautam, is it possible to have services with mix of GEO high throughput satellites, LEO satellites, and 5G mobile being used simultaneously? If so, what could be the challenges and viability of such offerings?
First of all, thank you, Chairman, for giving me an opportunity to be part of this important session. A very pertinent question. I'll start with a brief about the experience of 42 years which Inmarsat has on giving hybrid networks. For decades, we've been giving multi-band solutions to global governments for strategic reason. And I think European Aviation Network is one of a recent example where we have a hybrid network of air to ground that is based on a 5G network and S-band constellation, and which has actually helped us to scale our business on the aviation side in European Aviation Network. So keeping these experiences in mind, we have recently announced a network of future that is called Orchestra. It is actually amalgamation of geo satellites, terrestrial 5G networks, LEO satellites, and mesh technologies together. If I go a little bit more in depth, Orchestra is going to have, a L-band always-on connectivity layer. In fact, that's something which is going to give speeds 3 times what it has been giving today. So our L-band services will go beyond 1.7 MB in coming years. In addition to this, we have a layer of GX, which today is the world's fastest mobile broadband connectivity available in the world, and followed by a terrestrial layer of 5G, which will actually help to ease out capacity requirements in high demand hotspots like airports, seaports, and a small additional layer of capacity with a small LEO constellation, specifically for high demand areas like air routes, sea routes. So in fact, if I see today in the maritime side, we are already giving a hybrid network of L-band constellation as well as our Ka-band constellation. And in fact, we have also integrated 5G. So if today, if you check customers like Maersk or Great Eastern Shipping Corporation of India, or most of the customers, they have a box called NST, which actually integrates L-band, it integrates our Ka-band, it integrates 5G, and it ensures we give 99.999% kind of reliability of communications to our customers in the mobility side, that is in aviation, maritime, strategic government areas, and enterprises. So once we have Orchestra, I think this will go to a larger scale, which will ensure we continue to give, on an average, the world's fastest connectivity to our customers, on an average, lowest latency to our customers. So in a nutshell, this is something which we are already doing, and it's going to happen in a larger scale as we move forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Gautam. Thank you for giving us the details. Mr. Kishore Babu has not yet joined, so let me therefore ask my next question again to Mr. Sakya. Sakya, we all are waiting for you because you represent the government at the moment, and we're all keen to hear what the government is doing. So the next question is, given the fact that future satellite technologies like LEOs are going to be playing a complementary role to 5G, how do you see the service providers utilizing both satellite and 5G for delivery of services in a seamless manner to the end customer?
Thank you, Mr. Nath. Let me slightly beg to differ with you. In fact, 5G and satellite is not an appropriate two terms to be used together. 5G itself is an integrated, complete platform or the ecosystem which includes satellite. So 5G is not just an evolution like 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, which were primarily focusing on the voice communication, then slowly with the higher speeds of the data and the video thereon. The generations names keep on coming by just increasing the higher bandwidth and the larger speed. Now 5G is slightly more than that. Or I should say completely different than that. The mobile communication or the mobile technologies are part of it. But the 5G is an ecosystem where societal applications have to be developed using all sort of technologies. It will be comprised of this satellite, it would be comprised of the IMT, it will comprise of the Wi-Fi networks and many other types of the wireless connectivity. Now, considering that as the fact and the typical capability of the satellite networks, which others cannot provide. The moment we say go into these deep seas, or the entire ocean filled with the waters, we cannot think of any kind of, say, IMT network there or the Wi-Fi network there or some other things. So the satellite is going to continue to play the dominant role there. And that domination is not only in terms of availability of the connectivity, but today, irrespective of the place where the person is, they expect that the availability of broadband connectivity or the internet availability, even at the oddest place, should be with the same kind of the features what normally he enjoy at his home. So that is going to be continued only by virtue of the satellites. Now coming to the specific uses of the 5G, I think my friend in the panel, Mr. Gautam Sharma, has already explained the hybrid uses. And to my understanding, satellite is going to play a very vital role, not only for providing connectivity to the rest of the networks, but also as an independent network providing direct societal benefits to the people. That could be, say, related to the logistic requirements where the other networks are not available. That may be specific to the agricultural requirements, providing the information about the moisture level, about the temperature level, about the raining prospects, where rest of the networks are not available. Only the sensors are available placed at the specific geographical requirements. And those sensors are helping the information which goes back to the edge computing kind of requirements. Utilizing the capacity of the edge computing, the decision-making inability is possible. So in that sense, satellite will have the role of resiliency. It will have the role of direct deployment into the field. It will have the placement of the backhaul. It will have the connectivity where nothing else is possible. And two very specific uses in respect of the security of the nations. Supporting your strategic locations, supporting your strategic movements. There, we cannot move along with the, say, cellular network. Whereas movements of the troops, movements of intelligence units could be very much possible by using the satellite network without changing anything, because they are, whether they are the spacecrafts or whether they are the submarines or they are related to naval vessels, they are already equipped by one or another kind of the satellite network. So that continuity is going to be very important. So in a way, starting from the traditional usage and the forthcoming low latency or the embedded, say, your high broadband speed requirements, satellite will play a connecting role, connecting to the users, connecting to the applications, to the application providers, connecting to the network providers. So I think it is going to play a very vital role. And considering the size of our country, considering the geography of our country, even the, say, we had observed this rural versus urban kind of divisions. I personally feel that satellite is going to play a very, very big role. And what we see today, the connectivity available in the everybody's hand, whatever he wants to do, he can, whether it's watching movie or whether it's a gaming, whether it's a reading articles or be available on the social media or mere collecting the news. PalmTap is good enough connected to any kind of, say, cellular networks. Tomorrow, I look an integrated equipment which can get latched on the satellite network. Same integrated handset may get latched on to the cellular network. or to the Wi-Fi network, based on the individual's need, he is always connected, and there I am sure satellite will have a very prominent presence. I hope I'm able to reply to you. I have one question in your screen under the QA. Some of our friend has raised that when we say that the regulatory requirement will take care of the geographical kind of the needs in terms of the licensing, does it include the private networks also? Friends, I think as far as licensing frame is concerned, captive usage licensing regime is already existing. So if anybody is interested to have its own captive kind of the private network, they can avail even the current licensing framework for having that sort of the requirement. So I believe that is not something new going to come. The regime of captive network will continue to best our knowledge, but still we have to see that what kind of the recommendation comes, how the entire ecosystem gets worked out, and the moment something comes in black and white and the scrutiny of those things happen, probably we will have the more clarity. But as far as today's concern, anybody among the stakeholders can have captive network for their under the COG licensing framework itself. That is just to supplement the question came there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sakya. Thank you for clarifying about the 5G's the overall construct that it includes satellite, and also giving such a forceful statements about why satellite communications exist, irrespective of any other thing. I think that's very reassuring to hear from the government saying that. Okay, now my next question to Rahul. Given the fact that future satellite technologies like LEOs are going to be playing a complementary role to 5G, how do you see the service providers using both satellite and 5G for delivery of services in a seamless manner to the end customer?
Thank you, PJ, for that question. So I think we already covered that the broadband infrastructure is bedrock for the Digital India program of the government. Just to supplement for a minute what Mr. Sakya covered earlier, the NDCP or the Digital Communication Policy of 2018 focused on enhancing the broadband landscape in the country by leveraging all relevant technologies, whether it is terrestrial or satellite. So the service providers too, would have choices available now for their customers when they are offering their services, and the consumer can demand services of what he wants, right? So NDCP has already opened the doors, to the service providers to use any technology, 2G, 4G, LTE, 5G, and also access technologies like satellite communication or a mix of both. So I'm saying from the policy front, the clarity is completely there from the government end. The government has now also opened up the space sector for private participation with the draft Spacecom policy. And these historic reforms initiated by the Prime Minister completely support the Digital India vision of the government, and every individual in any corner of the country will soon have access to all connectivity. Now coming back to the point, to the question exactly. So, to players like OneWeb, the customer, as I said, can be the government, enterprise, or an individual. That means the service providers, we would have to offer ubiquitous coverage choice to the customer. And this coverage choice or connectivity choice can be on any platform in terms of connectivity, 2G, 4G, or 5G, or coverage using satellite. Similarly, using any technology, mobile, fixed, or satellite again, or a hybrid, as Gautam also mentioned. And depending on the customer requirement, which is the biggest mover, and you will have a commercial case. So you may have a case of latency. Somebody might have a requirement for mobility. Somebody might have a requirement on device or cost perhaps. So I think the choice, and of course, lastly, the choice, you may be in a remote area, as Mr. Sakya mentioned, for defense purposes. So I'm saying ultimately for the customer, every technology can be used to provide a service. And that's how we see the use actually happening. Let me give an example. The new generation of LEO satellite, such as OneWeb's, you'll be able to provide low latency, less than 50 millisecond delay round trip on RF paths, high throughput connections to any spot on the globe. And OneWeb satellite service will be supported by innovative low-cost user terminals that support 4G LTE, 5G, and LPWAN connectivity, thus bringing the high-speed access to surrounding areas of a satellite terminal and also extending the coverage of the terrestrial network. So I'm saying that today, the choice of what you use and how we are going to do it will be dependent on the customer. And as service providers, there'll be choices of technology to be able to use one or both or a mix of both. So that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul. My next question is to Krishna. What measures should be taken by the government to fast track the ushering in of new satellite technologies for delivery of IoT, M2M, and other new and emerging services?
Yeah, thanks, PJ. So first and foremost, I think this IoT is a new term which has come into existence in the recent times. But satellite networks, I think for very long years that I've been in this industry, we've always provided SCADA networks, and for many applications that I can think of, which are in today's parlance called as IoT, things like oil pipeline monitoring or smart metering, or many applications have been done by satellite. I think my friend Gautam is sitting here. So, we, Hughes and Inmarsat have developed quite a few terminals which are aimed at the M2M services and IoT services, and it has been very widely deployed worldwide. I think when it comes to India, I think the government has recognized this need. That's why there was a reference which was sent by DOT to the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, and there was a consultation paper followed by an open house. So hopefully we should see the recommendation out from TRAI soon, and which will be adopted by DOT. I think so that would definitely enable a lot of such services being available on satellite in addition to being available on terrestrial technology. Having said that, I think the government has also come up with the policy, and it's under implementation for the M2M service providers, a new category of service providers called M2M service providers, who will use the telecom networks for M2M purposes or provide M2M services to their customers. So once that licensing framework also gets implemented and established, I think they will not only be able to leverage terrestrial technologies, but they'll also be able to leverage satellite technologies as well. So I would say that a lot of this, what we are talking today, is all work in progress within the government. I think we should soon see such things come out, and which will just enable these technologies or enable these applications to be rolled out.
Thank you, Krishna. My next question is to Gautam Sharma. Will the satellite phones, which will enable seamless transition from satellite to terrestrial and vice versa, remain a dream, or will be translated to reality?
Thank you, Chairman. Again, a good question. To be very honest, technically it's possible, but commercially at the moment it's not viable, because if I see the market segment which we are targeting, these are actually used by defense officials. It's used by disaster agencies, or people who are actually tracking. And it is important to have very rugged phones, satellite phones, for these market segments. So they need IP65, IK04 kind of standards. And honestly, aesthetically, they will not look the way we would like to carry a phone which can work both on Satcom as well as on GSM network. I think another challenge remains, antennas will still remain large. It will, they'll look little clunky, may not be able to fit in our pocket. But I think moving forward, this may be a reality, but not today. From Android phones perspective, I think the challenge for them is they have antennas which are very small, and I don't think they will be able to cater to the RF signals requirements of a satellite. So in fact, in between, some of satellite providers, they have come with a solution called companion solution, where they have made sleeves. You can actually put your Android phone in that sleeve, and But again, you don't get the seamless experience because let's say you are on a satellite call and then you enter a cellular network and you receive an incoming call from a cellular network, your call will get disconnected. So it's again not seamless. But nevertheless, what Inmarsat is trying to do at the moment is we have issued a global RFI where we are trying to work on the next generation satellite phones and also options on sleeves. And I hope and I wish some manufacturers in India participate in this RFI so that we can actually make these in India, which at the moment are being made in Spain. And in addition to this, also when I see our roadmap, but again, it's a way ahead actually. We're also looking into a software application which can be actually kind of downloaded on an Android or an iOS platform phone, and then you can actually get data connectivity once you go out of the cellular network. So I think things are in progress, but it's going to take some time because everybody is focusing at the moment on the products and services which actually can generate high ARPUs, and I think this somewhere unfortunately lies low in our agenda at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Gautam.
May I, PJ, just interrupt for a very brief moment to welcome our chief guest, Mr. A.K. Tiwari, this afternoon. Thank you, sir, so much for joining us. I know you were tied up in a meeting, but it's a great privilege to have you with us today. Thank you so much, sir. Back to you, PJ, to continue the panel discussion.
Good afternoon, Mr. Tiwari. Now, since Mr. Babu has not been able to join, may I ask Nicholas Schubert, who is a distinguished reporter of 3GPP, question. Nicholas, are you available? Can I take the liberty of asking a question to you?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. My question to you is, given that satellite is getting integrated into the future 3GPP standards as part of 5G, how do you think that satellite and 5G would be able to work in a harmonized manner as far as use of common resources like spectrum is concerned?
This is a very, very good question. Indeed, we are facing resource scarcity at all levels, whether it's energy consumption, whether it's spectrum, and it is going to require extensive cooperation between the access technologies in order to optimize the use of these resources. So maybe as part of the 5G, this integration will help, but it's going to be even more and more deployed new features to achieve this optimization and fully deployed in the 6G premises. So already 5G will help, but it will require times to achieve that. I've seen just recently, I just noticed this morning a new study item that was proposed in 3GPP about spectrum sharing. Is the first item which is introduced about the subject in 3GPP. So it seems that everybody is indeed looking at these issues. I wanted to take the opportunity to raise some question. Indeed, energy efficiency is going to be very critical, and the 5G technology is very, very well equipped with that. And that's for satellite a good news, because we know that the legacy Satcom systems have not so much focused on these aspects. although terminals in the satellite networks are consuming quite a lot. And I want to also add something, which is one challenge we will have is increased security may kill the performance. So how to combine both and how to make sure that we can increase the security. I have seen a question related to the cyber security in 5G, but cyber security is a challenge in any network, not only 5G technology, and how to maintain performance. This is something that is a challenge and needs to be tackled. But obviously it would require quite a long discussion about that. So I'm sorry, I don't know if I responded to your question, but yeah, very, very good question. Resource scarcity is a big challenge and needs to be tackled. Yes.
Thank you, Nicholas. You indeed have answered the question quite aptly, and thank you very much for that. I guess with this, we have exhausted all the questions that we want to ask, and I think we also ending the. I think we've overshot the time that was allotted to us for this panel discussion. So therefore, just to I think that there's so many valid points and such interesting points have come from all the panelists. It's difficult to summarize all of them, but I don't think so they require summarizing because it's been very, very clear in terms of their communication. Some of the highlights that I have noted here is right from the beginning where Mr. Sakia had given the comfort to the whole group that the government is very seriously looking at getting the whole 5G as well as the LEO satellites operational in the country sooner than later. We heard very positive about the Spacecom policy. I don't know. I mean, there's no time being given, but I think the news that the message that we got is that it's just round the corner. If I may use the word, it should happen, and I think the whole industry is looking forward to that, which will make a lot of positive impact for the satellite communication industry. We heard Rahul say a lot about how the LEO services are likely to make an impact in the country. He has shared about the different market segments, be it the telecom operators, be it the businesses, the government, the disaster management, etc., where it can play a significant role in terms of bringing in more services and much more value than what has been possible so far. Krishna has already shared about what a lot that has been done by the government, as well as what are some of the other areas that can be done, which will make the industry viable. Very, very, very importantly, the point that he's talked about is a free market. And unless you really get into a free market, it's very difficult to have the satellite communication really bloom the way it can. And having come so far, I think that the very small bit is left. If I may use the word, Krishna, I think if that happens, I think the industry as a whole can be far bigger and far more effective than what that we are already today. Gautam Sharma explained the very interesting concept of how geo high throughput satellite, LEO, and 5G services can work cohesively together as seamless service. I think it's a very interesting concept that he talked of. So that I think that gives an idea in terms of what can be there in the future with 5G deployed and the new satellite technologies also being operational. And that is the future that we can look for in the country. We again spoke about, we also heard about that satellite need not be looked at only as a complement to 5G or any other technology. The satellite itself has got a lot of meaning. There are a lot of societal application which will not be possible to be run effectively unless the satellite communication is there in an effective manner in the country. I think that is again very reassuring, and I think that also reinforces the belief that the satellite communication industry in the country has. The satellite does have a lot of role to play for the country, and with the right kind of impetus given by the government and the evolution of the technologies happening, we can go many, many miles from where we are already. I think this is what are the key highlights of what we heard during this panel discussion. So it has been an honor to be able to speak to all the eminent panelists and go through these questions and get very, very valuable inputs. Thank you very much, and please enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you, PJ. Thank you.
Thank you so much, PJ, for moderating such an excellent and informative discussion. And thank you to each and every one of the participants, including Nicholas, for joining in at that last minute. It is now my distinct pleasure to invite our chief guest, Shri A.K. Tiwari, Member Technology, Digital Communications Commission, Government of India. An ITS officer of the 1983 batch, he is well conversant in all the field activities of DoT, as well as in licensing, security, national broadband mission, disaster management, etc. Presently responsible for the implementation part of DoT's policies in the field, he has earlier served as the advisor technology in the UP East LSA, senior DDG in the J&K LSA, and in the field units of DoT as TDE, TDM, Director VTM, and DDG Term and DDG RTech. I would request the co-authors of the white paper, Mr. Anil Tandon and Mr. Gaurav Kharod, all the members of the panel discussion, including Nicholas Schubert, please, to join us as the paper is being released. May I now request that the video releasing the paper be played.
Many thanks to our chief guest, Shri A.K. Tiwari, Member Technology, Digital Communications Commission, Government of India, for releasing the Broadband India Forum white paper on Satellites for 5G and Rural Connectivity. This white paper has been jointly authored by Mr. Anil Tandon, Principal Advisor BIF and former CTO Idea Cellular, together with Mr. Gaurav Kharod of Intelsat. The white paper includes highlights of the presentations made at the Digital Dialogue session in November 2020 by Mr. Nicholas Schubert, Rapporteur for the 3G PP NTN work item, Mr. R. Shakia, DDG Satellite, Department of Telecommunications, Mr. Rajesh Mehrotra, Principal Advisor BIF, and Mr. K. Krishna, Vice President and CTO of Hughes Communications India. Mr. K. Krishna is also the co-chair of BIF Satcom Committee, and he will now be presenting highlights of the white paper.
Thank you all for being present on this occasion. It is now time for me to request Mr. Krishna to make a presentation on the white paper. Krishna, will you be making the presentation on your own, or may I?
No, I'll be doing it on my own, Rajat.
Excellent, Krishna. Over to you. Thank you so much. Oh, before you begin, Krishna, I'd also like to welcome Kishore Babu for having joined us. I know it is a little late, but thank you so much for being present with us on this very, very happy occasion, sir. Thank you very much. Over to you, Krishna. Thank you.
Thanks, Rajat. So first, once again, a big thanks to the Broadband India Forum for requesting me to present this, white paper. It's been a real honor. I think Mr. Anil Tandon and Gaurav Kharod, have done a wonderful job putting together this paper based on a lot of information that was collated. And it's a real honor for me to present this. And again, before I start this presentation, I would also like to thank all the organizers, Arun Mukherjee, Debashish, Nima, Seema, all of them, Anand, who have put together a wonderful show. Without you all, it wouldn't have been possible. So with that, I'll start the presentation. So aptly, I think the paper is called Satellite for 5G and Rural Connectivity. I think Mr. Shakya gave a very, this is exactly the same thing that I was discussing with one of my colleagues, industry colleagues, a day back. And he articulated it very well that it is not satellite versus 5G or satellite or 5G, or, it is, I think, satellite is going to be integrated into 5G, and it's so there are going to be two access media. One is terrestrial and one is satellite, and both will deliver the 5G experience to the users, and not only in the urban cities but also to the rural population. In addition, I think 5G opens a plethora of applications, which are going to be made possible because of certain characteristics that 5G is going to bring to the table. So I think, also some good remarks have been made by Rahul on the LEO constellations, and of course Gautam, who really spoke about the integration of 5G. So I'll kind of bring in some more clarity on the points made by them and bring in some context to what they said. I think this is a universal slide. So 5G is going to be a network of networks. So I think three major objectives it's going to meet. One is the enhanced mobile broadband, the mission critical services, and the which includes the ultra low latency. And apart from connecting people, it's going to connect the massive Internet of Things, which is a big ecosystem in itself. Now, I think just to give a background, I think, from Hughes, we've been developing a lot of backhaul and access mechanisms for cellular networks. I'm happy to say today, I have some customers, Gautam Sharma from Inmarsat is a customer. OneWeb is our customer. So some of these technologies are what we've developed, and we've had the privilege of working closely with 3GPP on the standard itself, the release 17. So I'm going to talk about some of that, and which has been adequately covered in the white paper as well. So if you see the stack, 5G stack, it has two distinct sections. One is called the access stratum and one is called the non-access stratum. So typically any implementation, whether it's a satellite implementation or any what's called by, the release 17 talks about non-terrestrial access. That's a word used, NTA. So if you look at the non-terrestrial access, so the non-access stratum, is not touched. That's where the core of all the functions exist, the features exist. But I think the access stratum is the area that's going to be customized for variety of media choices, whether it's a satellite or whether it's terrestrial, and that's the access stratum which is going to be really optimized. So this is how satellite not only is going to play a backhaul role, but is also going to play an access role, which means satellite can effectively connect the user device or the user equipment or user terminal to the network, to the 5G network. So, so that has really been made possible with this release. So we'll dwell upon it, more as we go forward. Backhaul is a very compelling case. All of us know today, right from the 2G days, 2G, 3G, and today 4G, satellite is playing a big role as a backhaul medium. So a lot of compression, optimization techniques are used, for delay compensation, for effective reduction of bandwidth, things like that. And a lot of this will vastly, it has been implemented today in geo satellites, and of course, it's also being implemented in the LEO constellations. And LEO constellations has a distinct advantage that they bring the latency down. Rahul talked about a 50 milliseconds number. So that's going to be even more compelling as a case for satellite to play the role of a backhaul. Now, this is slightly a crowded chart, but so this is the real evolution what satellite has gone through in the in the 3GPP stack. Over especially in the optimized access stratum side. So if you see, we have had base stations which are satellite-based base stations, which is called the SBSS, right from 2G, 2.5G, 3G, LEO, 4G, 4G LEO. In fact, the 4G LEO is, so the OneWeb system is using the 3GPP stack on the 4G side already internally. Many of us might not be aware of this. People like Inmarsat today is using the 2.5G and the 3G stack, the 3GPP stack. And of course, with the next generation of LEO systems, MEO systems, and GEO systems, they are expected to use the 5G stack. So I think, so this is all the work that has already taken place, and this is all proven. So, even before the 3GPP formally recognized satellite as part of the non-terrestrial access, a lot of work and a lot of use cases and a lot of networks have been deployed with this integration already in place. So this is more on the access side. And again, what are the relevant features for satellite, that 5G offers, and how does that help in the integration? So 5G offers what's called network slicing. I'll go into it in a minute. I think all of us know about this network function virtualization. We are talking about open RANs or cloud implemented RANs, etc. Very, very fine granular quality of service, and multiple radio access technology operation and advanced LDPC coding. So these are areas, and I'm going to only talk about those three highlighted areas where satellite can play a very, very important role. I think if you take the network slicing, in any radio network, you will have what 5G enables is these multiple slices. So it's not, the radio network is not treated as one chunk, but it's sliced into many layers, and each layer can have its characteristics. So that way, you can serve an IoT device, you can serve a smartphone, you can serve another. I mean, this is not very prevalent in India, but MVNOs, which is the mobile virtual network operator, that's very prevalent in many geographies. So each of these slices can have their own characteristics, their own quality of service, etc. So I think this is one element where satellite can be in one of the slice and have certain distinct different characteristics than the other slices and still provide certain services to the edge devices. I think this is another important thing, which is a beautiful upgrade from 4G to 5G. 4G, the end-to-end service vis-a-vis the bearer networks, I think the quality of service was more on a per, it was on the whole, whereas 5G implements the quality of service on a per flow basis. Why is this important for satellite? Because satellite will have definitely a different quality of service characteristics as opposed to terrestrial access networks. So this again will be a distinct benefit. So any network or any application that can accommodate slightly different delay characteristics or a different quality of service criteria can be segregated, and that particular media can be applied only to that quality of service. So you can map the quality of service with a media type. So that's again a very, very enabling feature in 5G for the integration of satellite. And I think this is what really Gautam alluded to. So this is so while a lot of us are talking about today phones being 5G and satellite, and I think Gautam did elaborate that part of having a clunky antenna, etc. I think in the right context, I think today the many of the new LEO GEO constellations which are emerging are all in the upper bands, either in the upper end of the microwave bands or in the millimeter wave bands. And in these bands, it is without enough directivity with an omnidirectional antenna or a patch antenna on a phone, you can't close the link or you can't provide a reliable service. So that's why Gautam mentioned this, clunky big antenna sticking out of the phone. So while that might be one application and that can continue to work on the lower bands, which are L and S bands, which again can provide that access technology to the phones as well. But at the same time, there are in the upper bands, 5G is also going to address a number of other use cases which will need bigger terminals, which can accommodate bigger terminals, not necessarily a handset. So tomorrow, what we are talking about is even 5G delivering connectivity to a branch office or your home. So in such cases where the uptimes are needed are very high, or you need better quality of service, I think 5G, this kind of an integrated terminal can really work with both the terrestrial bearer and the satellite bearer working side by side in that sliced fashion that I already showed you. So this is going to be possible with 5G. So I think just to sum it up, I think the role of satellites in 5G. I think the first point, which is the content distribution. I think today more and more all the CDN networks, content distribution networks, are using edge caches. So which means the content is cached at as close as possible to the user. That is the only way the latency can be brought down, and that's the only way you can deliver a high quality of service to the user. If that has to happen, satellite has this biggest advantage of broadcast and multicast capability. So it is possible to update that edge cache of a CDN in no time and in one go without multiple legs of bandwidth. It can be done very, very well. Second, I did talk about this multiple radio access technology. So that I already elaborated. One access technology could be terrestrial, one could be satellite, or it could be different wireless technologies. I think a lot of today bandwidth is also taken by signaling and other latency traffic, tolerant traffic. Those traffic can be pushed into satellites where the terrestrial access network can be used for more high priority traffic, IoT traffic, time sensitive traffic, etc., etc. And all of these networks today need resilience. So which means if there's one access technology fails, the other access technology should be able to back up. I think that's also possible with satellite. So that's a great application. And of course, needless to say, satellite can provide universal coverage anywhere in the globe. You can get coverage. You are not dependent on a terrestrial coverage only. So somebody asked a question of a dual mode phone. Yes, that's very much possible. Today, just to elaborate on that question, I think all of the smartphones that we are using today, all of them, or at least most of them, have the chipset internally to work on different access spectrum, different frequency coverage. It's the antenna that's really inadequate, and as long as we can match the spectrum with the lower end of the spectrum like L and S band, and with the adequate antenna technology, I think we can make the universal coverage possible. And of course, satellite definitely has a role of providing reliable backhauls. We all know this, and it's already used today, and will with DOT coming with enabling provisions, this will be put to use by all the TSPs. So with this, I end my presentation. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much, Krishna, for that very, very educative and illuminating presentation. Much food for thought. And I look forward to seeing a development of the symbiotic relationship which exists between satellites and 5G, providing the much needed solution in rural connectivity. May I now call on our chief guest, Mr. Tiwari, to address the audience, please. Mr. Tiwari, over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. The August gathering. My dear friends from industry, members from government, ladies and gentlemen. Am I audible?
Yeah.
It is my privilege to be part of this digital deliberations, dialogue on satellite communication and 5G. I appreciate the Broadband India Forum, especially Mr. TV Ramchandran and the industry veterans for coming together to deliberate on this important subject actually. Nowadays, it is very important when 5G and when Satcom is, of course, it is not only for satellite communication, rather access network also, backhaul access network, everything is now planned actually in this. So Digital India needs ubiquitous high-speed connectivity, as you are aware. Beyond voice and pure data, several innovative services have become a new norm to service different industry verticals. You are aware on this 15th August, Honorable PM exhorted in the Independence Day address, creating world-class infrastructure, manufacturing new generation technologies and cutting-edge innovation. And that is our key objectives now for next. Even we have directive that by August 2022, 5G has to be launched also. Is it, Mr. Kishore Babu?
Yes, sir, you're right.
Okay. So with this in mind, let me share a few numbers which denote importance, ubiquitous next generation connectivity, which we need in large and diverse country like India. We have over 207 million households in rural India as per 2011 census. We also have over 3 lakh villages with population less than 1,000 people. Before coming to this, as in my biodata, it was mentioned that I came from Jan to I was here, senior DDG in Jammu and Kashmir. And then I had an opportunity to visit a smaller and rural area of that where even going is inaccessible, forget about any other services. So with this in mind, with a diverse geographical condition, next generation connectivity is top priority of government, and that is envisaged in national NDCP 2018. You are aware. So with this in mind, there are 900 tech startups working on solutions and services in different key verticals, including enterprise, healthcare, fintech, HR tech, edtech, and logistics, retails, etc. To bring the mass into the mainstream of digitization, PM Vani, the flagship program, aims to provide Wi-Fi in every nook and corner of the country. Any interrupt? Okay. So with this PM Vani, and that is very hot topic nowadays, actually, for DOT particularly. So PM Vani, and for such areas which I have just mentioned, the rural area, without Satcom coming into the mainframe, actually, this is not possible to connect all those areas, particularly in tough terrain. And Satcom is definitely, you know better actually, that is playing role in other strategic this thing also. So PM Vani is of course a flagship program. A strong backhaul is the need of time for such activities actually, for both cellular and non-cellular need. To submit robust high-speed connectivity is priority for these connectivity needs. 5G, of course, we are delayed, but as far as DOT is concerned and as far as the directive from the government is coming, the remote area connectivity and inhabited villages connectivity is also gaining very important priority from the government side of view. So there is an imminent need to adopt the state-of-the-art technology to address the connectivity needs of both terrestrial and satellite communication. And this, I hope BIF and this such type of gathering and with the eminent participation here, I'm sure that some better deliberations will come forward and will come across to such this thing actually. And I also had opportunity to pursue the white paper. I mean, recently I had a look on that, this thing, containing deliberations from previous session. Next generation connectivity is the fuel and investment for the country and to enhance its productivity. I emphasize that satellite communication have been playing a very important role since ages, not only addressing the rural and remote connectivity gaps, but also during the disaster. I remember 2001 disaster in earthquake disaster in Bhuj Kutch. Everybody knows actually. I was posted at that time at Ahmedabad, and for 2-3 months I came there. At that time, this satellite communication was the immediate solution other than anything else. And all other solutions came at least after 1.5 months. So that is the importance actually. I'm glad to see the radical pace at which new generation satellite technologies, including LEO, MEO, HAPS services, apart from satellite-based IoT and traditional high-throughput satellite services, the new generation Satcom services are able to address the issue of latency, as it was discussed by Mr. Krishnan in the previous discussion probably. So latency is also, that was a major challenge for Satcom. And if latency, for which industry is on the way actually, latency is reduced, then it will be really very useful in time critical applications. So the 3GPP activities in 5G under release 16, 17 and 18, which are in process actually. 17, I hope within a year or two it will come, is a significant development to enable the growth of common ecosystem, which will have significant impact in optimally using spectrum and infrastructure. As you may appreciate, internet as a medium for common man has become possible because of low capex. And of course, charges of all telecom services, including internet, nowadays after so much of the competition, is really affordable to the common man. So as country, we have a huge market in terms of size and numbers of public network and lakhs of factories and thousands of mining licenses from enterprises. Feasibility. India provides a good opportunity for next generation Satcom services to address these varied needs for different industry verticals. Taking this opportunity, I emphasize that continued industry engagement with the relevant policy inputs to enable proliferation and adoption of services is very important. I also want to touch upon the need for working together in identifying spectrum needs for the coming years. The spectrum roadmap, as I remember, it is in process for next 10 years. That way also, I may continue. You can, because Kishore Babu and Mr. Shakya, they are well versed with the subject, and they can take care of your concerns for that next vision roadmap for the spectrum policy. So taking this opportunity, I really I'm thankful for getting this opportunity for your this white paper and all these things. And I'm also, I can assure from the government of point of view, of course, I'm not the ultimate authority. We work in the collective team form of work based on stakeholders, discussions, deliberations, and all these things. All these inputs are considered. So from government, we are available to facilitate ease of doing business at any point of time, at any level you are, we are available and we are contactable, we are accessible. And so for this ease of doing business in many fold, actually, for a licensing point of view, lot of old regime licenses which are not in use as per the directive from the senior ministerial officers and the other PMO also. The ease of doing business is of the prime importance actually. So from the government side point of view, we are there to facilitate all whatever is required actually. As you may appreciate, constitution of satellite division in DOT is one of the key efforts to bring in focus of this vertical. Recently, DOT has also brought in reforms enabling use of satellite backhaul for access services, I've also already mentioned, and sharing of hubs and gateways infrastructure in addition to rationalization of spectrum charges. So I'm confident with all these inputs and with all other further deliberations and further discussions, definitely the Satcom and 5G, these two cannot be seen in the separate perspective. They are converging and they will be one part. We can definitely excel the largely at public interest at large we can serve, national interest we can serve, and of course the interest, Atmanirbhar Bharat and all these things, you may contribute for that and fulfill the Connect India mission, which is really a very bottleneck in mainland is definitely no problem, but other remote islands and hilly terrains, northeast region, there's a lot of things where Satcom can actively play very important role. So thank you for inviting me, and thank you for your deliberations. Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir, for your very interesting and erudite session. Before we go on to the next little bit, which is a vote of thanks to the chair and the chief guest, may I request each and every one of our panelists, our president, our chief guest, and the members who joined us who were responsible for this particular session coming together, may I request you all to switch on your cameras so that we could have our virtual photo opportunity, please. This is the only way that we can do it. So please, my request is to each and every one of the invitees here on the dais to please switch on your camera so that we can get a full-fledged view of everybody. Anil, may I have your camera on? Rajesh, sir?
They must set to gallery view, no?
Gallery view is what will happen. Thank you so much. Once again, thank you very much, Mr. Tiwari ji, for your very kind words of encouragement for this particular sector. And on that note, may I now request the convener of the Satcom committee, Mr. Devashish Bhattacharya, my able Senior Deputy Director General, to please offer a vote of thanks to the chief guest. Over to you, Deepu.
Thank you, Rajat. Thank you very much. I wouldn't come in the way of an early evening for all of us because we already, I think, 8 minutes ahead of schedule. So just to sort of do the formalities, I would first like to propose a vote of thanks to our chief guest, Shri A.K. Tiwari ji, sir, for an excellent direction and speech which talked about the roadmap for the future of 5G and satellite together. And I think you have really broken the silos in which they were earlier existing, and you have brought together what is called the true convergence of both. And hopefully going forward in future, sir, this will be the roadmap ahead. Thank you very much, sir, for giving us or setting the direction in accordingly. Thank you, sir. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our esteemed panelists and our chair, Mr. Pradeep Nath, the chairman of the Satcom committee, for having chaired the panel discussion, which involved the participation of Mr. R. Shakia, DDG Satellite DOT. Thank you, sir. Mr. Gautam Sharma, MD in Marsat, CEO and MD in Marsat. Thank you, Gautam. Mr. K. Krishna, CTO and VP Government Affairs, Hughes. Thank you, Mr. Krishna. And Mr. Rahul Watts, who's also the head of government affairs in Airtel and OneWeb. Thank you, Mr. Rahul Watts as well. I would also like to thank, yes, the contributors of the original session, which led to this particular digital dialogue, which was held on 17th of November, where we saw the participation of Mr. Nicholas Schubert, a distinguished rapporteur from 3GPP. Thank you, Mr. Schubert, for giving us the direction and the roadmap for the standardization activity in 3GPP of satellite and 5G. Thank you, sir. We would also like to take this opportunity to thank the two authors of this particular paper, which is Mr. Anil Tandon. Thank you, sir, who is a distinguished honorary principal advisor to Broadband India Forum, and Mr. Gaurav Kharod. Thank you, Mr. Gaurav Kharod, Managing Sales Director, Intelsat. Thank you. I would also like to thank the other speakers who were there on the 17th November panel, namely Mr. Rajesh Mehrotra, Honorary Principal Advisor, Broadband India Forum. Thank you, Rajesh Mehrotra ji. Thank you. And Mr. Krishna, thank you once again. And of course, Mr. Shakya. Thank you once again. With
Kishore Babu.
And of course, to say that before I forget, I must also thank Mr. Kishore Babu for having joined us despite his extremely busy schedule, for having taken the opportunity to also join us. Thank you, Mr. Babu, for having attended this program. With this, I come to the closure of this particular session with a final vote of thanks to all the participants who participated. We had it at one point of time, 116 participants who participated. So thanks to each and every one of you, and also to those erudite questions that were posed on the chat box and the Q&A to our panelists, which our panelists have very gracefully answered, each one of them. Thank you very much again to all the people who posted the questions, as well as the answers that were provided by our panelists. Thank you once again. So with this, I would like to now hand over the floor back to our anchor, Mr. Rajat Mukherjee, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Devashish. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of today's program. Thank you for joining us this evening, and we look forward to your taking part in the next digital dialogue from Broadband India Forum. From all of us here, good evening, stay safe, stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.